Welcome back for episode 2 of the Sports and Schmooze podcast. I'm here with Sam, and we're excited to get going. So I'll hand it off to Sam, who will be discussing a lot about a lot of the NBA. There's been a ton of news in the offseason so far, and we're excited to dive into it.
It's been absolute off-season mayhem in the NBA over the last few weeks. I gotta be honest with you, Shalom, like making my notes for this pod, I had to change the doc up probably 50 times. I mean, every single hour it just seemed like there was breaking news about some big trade coming in. I guess I'm gonna have to start with the latest deal we've seen with Jalen Brown being traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, now Shalom's hometown, in exchange for Paul George and two first round and second round picks. Um, I don't know what you think, but I'm gonna just give a quick little take on this.
Sure.
I love this trade for the Sixers. I don't know how they pulled this off. I think the last few years, anyone who's been following the Sixers knows with Daryl Morey, hasn't necessarily made the best offseason moves for that franchise. I think that we've been trusting this process for a long time, and we haven't really seen it materialize in any sort of way. But I do think, in rare exception, that today they have made an amazing move in acquiring Jalen Brown, a young dynamic scorer with who put up MVP numbers last season, now going to team up and take the weight off Joel Embiid, teaming up as well with Tyrese Maxey, who will be entering his prime within the next few years. I just love this trade for the Sixers. When it comes to the Celtics, I don't really understand where they're coming from. I don't really love this trade for them. Um, I think I hold a bit of an unpopular opinion. I think just for some people that don't know, Jalen Brown recently made some comments in the beginning of the offseason, alluding to the fact that this season was his favorite season, the season coincidentally where Jason Tatum wasn't playing. Take that as you will, interpret it as you want. It wasn't a great look for the dynamic of the team. I also think, and as well, the management just felt that this core did not have what it takes to win, and actually compete for a championship. With that being said, I do think that this relationship could have been repaired. I think that they're grown men and that they could have found a way to play together, and make it work. I do think Tatum and Brown could make a winner out of the Celtics. We won't be seeing that anymore. That will be Paul George. Um, an old and an injury-prone Paul George. This is definitely a downgrade for the Celtics. I really do not love this trade for them. I think if you're going to trade a player at Jalen Brown's caliber, you either go draft pick heavy and you try to build for the future. The trend we're seeing, as we saw with the Spurs and the OKC Thunder and various other teams, or you at least acquire a player that's close enough to his caliber that it's justifiable. But Paul
Do
George
you
is
do you think that the Celtics could have done anything more to get out of this deal? Because it seems like this is a one-sided deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have a washed-out Paul George, a couple of picks that are later on in the draft, in next year's draft and the year after. I think it's the third and fourth pick in the 2027 and 2028 draft. And I just find that this whole trade is so lopsided, right? What was Boston trying to get out of this?
I think Philly took advantage of a troublesome situation in Boston, which is that the Celtics felt the need to trade Jalen Brown. I don't know, we're gonna get to the Giannis trade to the Heat, an absolutely crazy trade soon. But for those who don't know, Brown was offered to the Heat in exchange for Giannis. The Celtics attempted to trade him for Giannis. That was their original goal. I
Yeah, I
think
don't I don't think that would have been as good for the Heat that as the Giannis trade that they pulled off.
Yeah. Oh, well, sorry. I didn't mean trade. Yeah. I mean that exactly. They tried the Celtics tried trading Brown to the Bucks for
Right.
Giannis. I
Right.
got my mistake. But I like you said, I think that Giannis on the Celtics would have been dangerous and it would have been a great return for a player like Jalen Brown. I think that when you're starting to make offers like that, it is sad to see that the end result ends up being a player like Paul George, who I don't have much faith in
Right.
anymore.
At least if it was for Giannis, it wouldn't be as lopsided as this trade. Like it would make some sort of sense for both teams.
It would be, I think that would have been a great trade. It just didn't
Right.
work, unfortunately. But and we will get to the honest trade too. I do think that the Celtics got fleeced in this trade, and I think it's going to be a tough few
Got
years.
to come to Philly to watch Jalen Brown.
Yeah, we will definitely be watching Jalen Brown.
Love that. what's with Kawhi going to the Raptors? I
You
saw this today, and that hyped me up.
you took the words right out of my mouth. We were getting straight to Kawhi Leonard to the Raptors. This is breaking news. Kawhi Leonard will be wearing the Toronto Raptors uniform again.
Unbelievable. Is it 2019 all over again?
Honestly,
Is it 2019 all over again?
well, I think it might be. Let me just say, okay, the trade, first of all, the Clippers will be receiving Grady Dick, Brandon Ingram, two unprotected first round picks, one pick swap, and two second round picks. It's a big package for Leonard, and as it should be, we're talking about a potential MVP candidate player when healthy. We're talking about a player that delivered a chip for the Raptors in 2019. I really think that this trade is either going to be a swing or a miss, a hit or a miss for the Raptors, and I'll tell you why. Kawhi Leonard is not getting younger. He's injury prone. He's also currently under investigation for his potential attempt in circumventing the salary cap with the with aspiration and all that. I think that he's had a lot of drama around him the last few years. His play is certainly his overall persona as a player has certainly declined, but I would say that his play is just as good as it's always been. When he played last season, he was putting up close to MVP numbers. He finished seventh in MVP voting, despite everything last season, which I find remarkable. I think the Raptors acquired a generational talent. They're immediately a contender right now. The Knicks have to watch their back. You got another team that can make the NBA Finals. I think this is scary. I also think it's only a 1 to 2 year window. You're not getting more than that in Kawhi, and we shall see how it works out, Shalom. Hear your opinion on this as well. The Clippers have been nothing but mediocre the last few years, a team that hasn't passed the second round of the playoffs with that Leonard Paul George combination. They don't go draft heavy, and now they're not scoring great players, generational players either. There are no franchise players on that team. You just got a bunch of decent players, and they're just going to continue to be a play-in team. I don't see the strategy. You're not going draft heavy, you're not getting lottery picks, and you're also not competing for championships. And this just furthers that drought down mediocrity. I don't love it for the Clippers personally.
So I need to disagree with you there because if I read this correctly, you got two young players. They may not be top tier caliber, but they're definitely valuable in Grady Dick and Brandon Ingram, right? You have two unprotected first round picks, two second round picks, and one pick swap. So it's a pretty big package for a player who, like you said, is not getting any younger and who's injury prone and who's currently under investigation. So they separate themselves from that type of player. They get a lot younger in the process, and they also get potential picks. So to me, I kind of like this trade for the Clippers, not in the sense that they're getting incredible value and they're getting incredible players for an NBA superstar, but they're investing in their future, and I think this makes sense. And this is the type of trade I would have wanted to see the Toronto Maple Leafs make. Right, we'll discuss them later on, but they're not getting any younger, and we'll go through their roster, and what we'll see is that they're really pushing to make a playoff mark with the team and the acquisitions that they've made over the offseason so far. So I think the Clippers are trying to do the same thing. They're not committing to a rebuild. I think that's what we see here in both these teams, and I think the Clippers, in a way, have done pretty well in a trade like this.
I understand where you're coming from on that for sure. If you look at this season with the Clippers, right, they went on a 15 to 20 game winning streak when James Harden was still there and Kawhi wasn't injured. They went from a team that was the worst team in the NBA to begin the season to potential that team that looked like it could somehow, no, without anyone expecting, make a respectable run in the playoffs. Um, and then they decided to trade James Harden and basically giving Kawhi the message that we're gonna go for the rebuild. Um, and then they trade Kawhi for two very good players, and I think Grady Dick and I think especially Brandon Ingram are two very respectable players. I just think that, and I think it just might be the way I see things. I could be a bit black and white when it comes to trade analysis
That's
sometimes.
fine. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's better to go either way more draft heavy. Maybe you go for 4 first round picks, something of that sort, and just focus less on the immediate because right now like they're just gonna with keep getting players that could win them some games, but not necessarily enough games. I don't like the team sitting in this area of mediocrity. I do respect that they're not making an obvious attempt to tank. I think that like there's been a lot of criticism against the Wizards and the Jazz and various other organizations this year for clearly purposely losing games for the purposes of scoring high in the draft lottery. So I do respect them in that from that standpoint. Um, I do wonder if they could have gotten more for Kawhi Leonard. But considering what you're saying, it has been a complicated situation with him for
I
sure.
hear you. I hear you. I think what you're trying to say is that you would have wanted to see a trade between these two teams, like the Giannis trade with the Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks, as well as the LaMelo Ball trade with the Timberwolves, right? Like very draft heavy for incredible players, right? Where you have one team who's trying to make a championship run, whereas another team is simply trying to rebuild and they're gaining all the young talent they can, all the potential picks that they can get, right? To solidify a good rebuild.
For sure. I mean, I think in theory that would be preferable, but I think in practice I do agree with you a little bit in that, especially since the implementation of the second name print by the NBA and the more strict rules regarding cap spending, I do think, and with and everything of that sort, I do think that trades are just less lopsided than they used to be. I think it's more difficult now to get an adequate return on whatever asset you're offering, right? We're no longer in the era of 4 first round picks for for Miles Bridges, which like although he won a championship, I think is still like in hindsight it was technically worth it, but I think that everyone thought the Knicks were crazy at the time. I don't
Right.
think I think even for superstars like Kawhi and Giannis, we don't see that anymore, and I think the NBA is changing in that regard. For
Well, I beg to differ. Like going on to the Giannis trade, it was a massive package, right? You
it
you
was.
start off with I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the face of the franchise, or at least the point guard of the franchise, Tyler Hero, right? You have the number 13th pick in this year's draft, pick swap for 2030, second round draft pick in 2033, first round picks in 2031 and 2033. And then a bunch of key role players. That's a massive package. Not to say that I don't think that's what they needed to give in order to get a player like Giannis. I think all in all, this trade is incredibly fair for both teams based on what they're trying to do in the next few seasons. But boy, this is a big, big package for a player like Giannis.
Oh, I love this trade. I love this trade for the Heat, by the way, and I'm all for it, by the way. One thing we know about Pat Riley as a president for this Heat's team is that he's not the one to try to rebuild. He always wants to have a punch at the championship. He always wants to have a chance to go for it. And this is him saying, the Heat were sitting similar to the Clippers in mediocrity over the last few years, a play-in team, but with no real hopes for a championship. And he's
Right.
saying, we're not going to go for the draft process or the rebuilding process. We're going to instead try to acquire this big time player and we're going to go for a championship immediately. The Heat are immediately a contender. I love the Bam Adebayo Giannis duo. I think that's two big men that could work really well together.
I love that. I love that. I love Bam as a player. He's a great big man, probably in my opinion, one of the best in the league. He's very underrated. And when you add a guy like Giannis, that's going to be a tough team to beat.
Oh yeah, and it's starting to become more of an inside game today. I mean
Yeah,
the the
definitely.
I mean the Warriors 3-point shooting era. I mean, although the NBA is a 3-point shooting league, I think we saw that size does matter, like we saw in these NBA finals. And I think that the Heat are going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think the Knicks got to watch out. You got the Raptors coming, you got the Heat coming, you got the Sixers now with a new core. I think this is a different East. I think this is why it was so important for the Knicks to win in this year's finals. I think this was their window and they accomplished that. I think this trade was a little risky for the Heat though. Because if they miss with Giannis, if Giannis also, who's an injury prone player who's approaching his mid 30s, doesn't end up giving you what doesn't end up producing the value which you hoped for, you did trade away a big chunk of your future, and you're gonna be down you're not gonna be a great team for a little while. So I'm not sure what you think about that, but I think it's a little risky for sure.
Well, yeah, I agree with you in this in the sense that it's either championship or bust in the next few years. this is crunch time for the Heat. They've really given up, like you said, they've given up their youth. They've given up a lot of key assets for the future. And it seems like, listen, Giannis is a champion, right? He's won in 2020, and I think that with that experience, you can do something. You can do some damage in the East. If you get past the East, you'll have to face a team like the Spurs or the Thunder in the finals. And a team like that won't be easy, but I do think when you have a duo like they have right now with Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo, I really think they'd be able to answer to a player like Wembanyama or a player like Chet.
Well, they just drafted a player by the last name of Mara who stands 7'1", so that's another
Yeah.
force to be reckoned with.
So yeah, so I'm saying like
Harden's
I do think that duo will be able to face any type of big team in the league moving forward.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think, and I would like to make one more comment about this Giannis trade. Just a few months ago, when teams were when teams were making big offers, such as big market teams like Golden State, the Timberwolves, the Celtics, uh, and the Heat were kind of in the background of those negotiations, right? I think, and the Knicks as well, obviously, were making big offers for Giannis, and I think everyone was a little afraid of Giannis creating a lopsided league, similar to like what LeBron did when he went to the Heat, of just a dominant Eastern Conference team that's going to rule the East for a few years. I think with the Heat, we see a little bit more of an equalizing factor where he made a great team in the Heat, but he could still be competed against by the Knicks or by the Celtics, not the Celtics really, but by Philly. Uh, or by various other teams. So I think this trade doesn't destroy the Eastern Conference. I think it just makes it a lot more competitive. And Kawhi will be returning there as well. I think the East is going to be absolutely fascinating next season.
I
Uh,
agree.
and
I agree.
well,
What do you think about this hype or these rumors about LeBron leaving the Lakers?
Well, I think that's I think it's just really interesting. I think first of all, LeBron James has given 8 years to the Lakers. I think that you should give nothing but props to him. By the end of the day, he did get them a championship in 2020. You could call it a fake bubble ring. I know that you may want to say that.
No, I think that was one of the harder championships to win. Just like in the NHL, you
Yeah.
know, the bubble was an extremely intense, difficult type of style of play. I think it was incredibly difficult for the players to adapt to the new, regulations. Moving from country to country, having no fans in attendance. I mean, fans help. Fans really get you going, and just that alone was probably incredibly difficult to go on a run like that. Right? You also have to think about the intense games, the hard weeks, day by day training, playing intense games of basketball and hockey. You know, the fans are what hype you up in the moment, right? But when you don't have those fans and you need to work your way through that mental toughness, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, especially in a playoff run in the top leagues in the world. So I think those championships, if not of equal value, I think they're greater value in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that it's a completely respectable championship. He fulfilled his goal of the Lakers. I think the Lakers were on a completely different timeline the second they acquired Luka Doncic. They're now a younger team. They don't need LeBron James anymore. They could build more for the future. I think his time was up there. I think he has about maximum 1 or 2 years left of his career, and he wants to join a winner, a contender that could make him a winner, that could get him maybe one more ring before he retires. I think the Cavs are a possibility, but what I want to ask you is, do you think Golden State's a good landing spot? I think that's what the rumor is right now.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. And before I answer that, I do think this free agency is well overhyped. LeBron is in his 40s. I don't think he's going to be on wherever he goes. I don't think he's going to be on that team for more than a year, maybe two. I think this is his last dance, so to speak, where I'm going to go to a team to try and win one more. And if that's not the case, then I'm just going to hang up my shoes and, you know, move on. Um, but I do think the best spot would be Golden State. I think it would be so cool to see the top players of our generation play on the same team. We saw them play on Team USA, and they just complemented each other so well.
You might have to
Uh,
get in some wheelchairs though, because that's an old team. I mean, we're talking about a 38-year-old Stephen Curry, a 42-year-old LeBron James. Draymond Green is not getting any younger. I mean, we're talking about a team that's older than the Beth Zion congregation. I'm kidding. No, but I mean, uh,
that said, however, I do need to say sometimes a lot of old experience can go a long way. Have you ever seen Uncle Drew?
I
Sometimes you need the old Alta Cocker mentality to get through it, right? You got sometimes these old guys got to teach the next generation a thing or two. So I think that would be a great opportunity for the league. You'll see a bunch of old timers. I think they would go pretty far
you
because
think
they're both on teams who excelled, who did fairly well in this year's season. So moving forward, I think it would be very cool to see both of them play together, and I think they'll do pretty well.
Well, imagine the Golden State Warriors, a team of the average age of 40, playing this 20 the San Antonio Spurs, an average team of 20.
That would be ridiculous to
I
see.
mean, I think that like I think it would be really fun to watch. I would tune in to see Steph Curry and LeBron James in in the same uniform. I think it
Yeah.
would be absolutely fascinating. I think there'll be a lot of knee pain and you'll need a lot of trainers for sure. But I think that for one season, who cares? Go for it.
Why not? Why not?
Why not? If you're the Golden State Warriors, you only have a few years left of Stephen Curry. He's in the twilight of his career right now. Let's try to go for something meaningful. Let's see if we could pull it off. It would be historical. I'm all for it if it happens. And LeBron James said he's willing to take a minimum deal. Draymond Green recently rejected his $27.7 million player option. That frees up $15 million of cap space for LeBron.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think all these players are, trying to put this in motion through being selfless, right?
Hey, look at what they did.
Not going for the major contracts. Like you said, LeBron, I heard this too. LeBron said he wouldn't go for a max contract if you're willing to go for a minimum, a payment or minimum contract, whatever it is. And I think he wants to set himself up in a place where he could play for a year and try and make another championship run.
Yeah, and just to build off what you're saying, and I totally agree. I think this team is showing a large amount of selflessness in trying to get him to join the squad. Contrary to what Allen analysts are saying, this team really believes in the vision, despite the age factor, despite in past injuries that Curry has been through the last year. I really think that they if they could pull it together for one season, they could potentially pull this off. Like I said, I'm all for it, and I would love to see this happen.
Okay, so we spoke a lot about basketball. We're going to move on to hockey now. There is a ton of news in the NHL. Sam, I'm going to want your opinion on this, but we have a special guest that we're going to be interviewing, a good friend of both of ours, Itai Weiss, who will be joining right now.
Hey,
Oh man.
What's up, Itai?
He comes with a jersey. Yeah, take the
how's
jersey
the rep?
off.
Of
How's the
course, the
rep?
jersey. Of course, the jersey. I love it, but I hate it at the same time.
That's
I love it. So, Itai, welcome to the Sports and Schmooze podcast. We're so honored to have you here with us.
glad to be here.
Yeah, and we thought it was apropos because there was a lot that went on today in the Toronto Maple Leafs world, and we needed an expert like you to,
Oh, I'm glad.
give their input and to shed some light on what went on. So, you know, overall, how are you feeling from today alone?
Well, if you were by me this afternoon, you would have heard me screaming when Dennis Hildeby got traded for Nick Paul.
Right.
I was hoping, when I saw they brought in Bobrovsky, I said, okay, now with two Russian guys up there for goaltending. But nope, they sent him away for Nick Paul, and I hope he has a bounce back season from where he was last year. Uh, Whatever, you know how it is. It's we brought in two guys from Tampa this year, Darren Radish and Nick Paul.
Right.
So they're reunited after being gone for what, a month. Uh, so we'll see how that turns out. But there's a lot. There's a lot. Like Nick Robertson getting traded for a fourth round pick. I thought maybe he could have gone for more. If we're
Okay,
just
so
gonna
it's
stick
a
on,
bunch of mixed feelings,
it's
right?
a bunch of mixed feelings. Like
Because
if I
I,
were
I
to,
happen to agree with you, right? I thought Hildeby was an incredible asset that the Maple Leafs had. Sam and I actually saw him. We went to a Rocket game against the Marlies this past year, and
nice.
he's like a 6'8" young goalie. He's a massive presence in the net. So, when I saw that, I guess the Bobrovsky signing or the Bobrovsky acquisition was somewhat of a relief on the goalie standpoint for the Maple Leafs, and we'll get to Bobrovsky in a second. But I thought Hildeby was one that slipped through the Maple Leafs' fingers.
Well, the last time Bobrovsky and Stolars were the goalie tandem in net,
Right. In Florida,
it was with the
right? So
Raptors.
the tandem is back, right? They were a
Yeah.
scary tandem. I
But
know
now,
against Vegas they lost in the Cup final, but they weren't goalies to be reckoned with. They were an amazing goalie tandem.
if you
So
want to see,
so yeah,
if you want,
it's
yeah.
Hey,
uh,
I got one question quick. The Leafs, I think it's typical of the Leafs to sign a guy who's named after a vegetable, in Radish. I don't, I don't know. I think the deal is a little lopsided. 8 million for 8 years. Is that what it is? I think it's something of that sort. I think there's a little bit of an overpay. I'm not really surprised though when the Leafs doing that. I don't know. What do you think about that trade, Ty?
Well, I just want to say, if you guys are going to talk about naming after foods, didn't you guys just sign a guy whose name is very similar to poulet? you know, uh, I had to look that up really quick. He signed him to a 1-year, 2-way contract. Um,
I feel like we could go nonstop back and forth, Habs, Leafs, shots, and yeah.
well, I will say the Demidov signing is gonna age very well.
So yeah,
I
we'll get to that in a second, and I'll want your
Oh,
input as
sorry, I'm
well. But
jumping ahead.
no, that's totally fine, right? But there's just so much Maple Leafs. Like I was choking right today when I saw all these Maple Leafs acquisitions, and I said, "Wow, are they really trying to go for a playoff run here?" And I looked at their team, and I look at their structure now from yesterday, and one, I think this is a playoff team. It's sad to say, I do think it's a playoff team. They've acquired incredible role players for decent contracts. Very, very solid signings. I think there were three or four of them, right? But you got Sergei Bobrovsky, I think for the 3 years we have him for 7 mil. I can't believe I just said we. My gosh. For 7 mil a year. No. Don't get any ideas, Itai. Right?
I'm getting ideas.
He's turning to the dark side. That's what happens when you marry a girl from Toronto.
Oh
There you
my
go.
gosh.
I think we gotta adjust this quickly. I know we have some important trade talk to talk about, but I think Shalom's status with this team is getting a little shaky. We have to figure out. Sometimes we may have to be careful about the influence Torontonians have on our lives. So
God
let's
forbid.
just watch.
That's the problem.
No,
Right?
I say bring
Moving
on.
on, right? Colton Sisson, Teddy Bluger, Brandon Duhaime, Zach McGowan. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but all these players were signed for incredible value. So, right, your back six on offense is fairly decent. Your top six are incredible. I just learned this today that Tavares is on a 3-year contract for $4.8 million.
So I actually think it comes in a little bit lower than that. He signed a 4-year contract last year. I
That's
pulled it up right now,
ridiculous value.
but it's one of the last contracts that's going to have deferred salary in it, which is why it has some really weird number that it ends with.
listen, Tavares
Uh,
is on the older end, but I still think that
Regardless, he's a 70-point player at that value, right? That's a steal and a half. So
100%. I
I
would
I didn't
say,
realize that, but this past year was his first season in that contract. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right. So
he's entering the second year.
yeah, so that's an impressive sign there, even though it was done a year ago. So now the big question, Itai, Sergei Bobrovsky. What are your thoughts? Do you like it? Do you not? Is it a good value? Is he old, washed out, or can he bring this team to or on a cup run? If not, the Stanley Cup Finals. What do you think?
So I'll wrap in a couple other things. Is as you said on the bottom six, The big change they made is it's significantly more defensively minded now, and that bodes well for whoever's in net. So they're hoping. So last year Bobrovsky did not have a good season. You look it up; he did not have a good season.
Right. I think it was his
The
worst season.
the entire Panthers team had a bad
Right.
season. So you would hope that he can rebound from that. Also, he acts as a mentor for Archer Akimov, who was the starting goalie through the Calder Cup run that the Marlies had, whereas actually Hildeby who sat on the net, interestingly enough. So you would hope that he would also have that mentorship influence there. I guess the hope is that he can keep it going for another 1 to 2 years. And as you mentioned with that 3-year, if you look at the other signings the Leafs made today, all of them are either for 2 or 3 years. And that 2-year window is the same window that Matthews is on his contract. So in the event that they have to blow everything up, they have all of this cap hit coming off. The 4.25 on Sissons, the 4 million on Roslovic, which I really like the Roslovic signing.
Right. So
All of that comes off the books. Or, I think Bluger's also on a 3-year. I think it's Bluger and Bobrovsky on 3-year contracts.
Yes.
So even then, it's only for 1 year. So in the worst case scenario,
Or sorry, Bluger's on a 2-year, but yes. It lines up nicely.
I believe it's what's his name? Brendan Duhaime.
Yeah, Brendan Duhaime for 3 years, correct.
Yeah. So all of these contracts are coming off the books then. So in the worst case scenario, what Chaika's done is he's made sure that the Leafs are not handcuffed.
Right.
Which I do like.
Right. The last thing I'll ask about the Leafs, and Sam, I want your take as well. Gavin McKenna. What are your expectations for him? I know as a Habs fan, the expectations for Demi Dove were Calder Trophy. Unfortunately, Matthew Schaefer got it instead, and I thought Matthew Schaefer deserved it as a defenseman. There's no doubt in my mind that he should have received the Calder. What are your expectations for Gavin McKenna? Where do you think he's going to fit on the offensive lines? What's your take on that?
Well, it seems to me that Gavin McKenna he's NHL ready, and I think the intent is for him to slot in immediately. The question is where. He had an interview after he was drafted where he said he knows that he has to play up towards Matthews, but towards playing with Matthews. But later on, I read from an insider that they actually expect to play him with Matthews almost immediately. So I think that they will end up playing him in the top 6. If the Leafs had held on to Matias Maccelli, I wanted them to experiment with seeing how Maccelli plays on the second line. Now he's on the Islanders, so that's a moot point. So I think he will end up on the top line. Maybe they move him to the second. The question is, does he get PP1 time, PP2 time?
A good question.
But I think
it's a good question. I think at some point he'll be on the first power play line. I think just to get his feet wet, he'll start off on the second, but he's definitely an asset in that regard. I do think he'll be on both those lines, and I'll be on the second one from the get-go.
I think McKenna could definitely make an impact on the Leafs relatively quickly. I think that the Leafs have been kind of offensively stagnated over the past season or two. Especially with Matthews being injured this season, with the team just going through various changes over the last few years. I think a young player like McKenna could come in and give him a little spark that they may need. I think this is also a franchise that is just looking to change things up and is looking to experiment and see who could fit within their system. They're looking for a new identity since that Marner Matthews era. So I think that a player like McKenna could definitely go in there and make an impact right away for sure. I think sky's the limit, honestly. I think that the Leafs need to find their new guy or their new guys. And I think that a player like that, despite being quite young, could definitely go in and make a quick impact for sure.
I do think there's a little bit of a danger with setting expectations too high, because that if he doesn't meet them, then Toronto media can get a little crazy.
Oh, for sure, for sure. We saw that with Marner, right?
Yeah.
The Marner situation is a whole other thing.
Playing in Toronto.
The Marner thing's different, and that I don't think we have enough time for that today. I've got strong feelings.
There's never enough time. There's never enough time for Leafs fans and Marner. I'm telling you. It's called Shalom. It's called a lack of accountability. It's
I decline to answer on the grounds that I don't want to, because I could go on a tangent for hours about this. Just I don't want to disrespect our guest.
No, it's
let's not dive into that. That's
okay.
Yeah.
And so Itai, last question for you, right? Suppose that the Leafs this year have set themselves up for the potential for a successful playoff run. A year or two down the line, right? Can you see them as cup contenders? Because, like you said, these contracts are ending. A good thing about these contracts ending at the time which they are is that the salary cap is increasing to an incredible amount where they'll have the room to re-sign, sign new or sign additional players to feed into the small pieces that they may be looking for in the future, right? But if they don't achieve the goals that they want to by the time these contracts end, would you say that they need to wipe everything off and start anew and commit to a rebuild? What's your take on that?
So it's not simple because at the end of the day these are businesses and not and like they're sports teams, but they're also businesses, and there's a question of where the financial impact is. So the question is, does Rogers, the owners of MLSE, do they can they stomach reduced revenue from a rebuild? Because if they don't want it to happen, then they're continually going to keep themselves in contention, to keep seats filled and whatnot. And that's a separate question. I can't give you analysis on that. I'm not sitting in their boardroom meetings. But if you looked at all the discussion before the draft, but when it looked like the Leafs odds were they were going to give a 6th or 7th round pick to Boston, and they're out of luck. But when they got McKenna, what happened was before that draft lottery, all the discussion was Matthews is thinking about leaving. All these things, and people were saying, where's Matthews going to go? Could he go to Minnesota? They need a top center. But with McKenna coming in, all of a sudden they realized we have a new top 6 guy who can come in. This opens up our contention window beyond 2 years. So I think fundamentally they cannot allow themselves to drop because they don't own their 1st round pick in the next 2 years. They don't have it. So there's no incentive to tank. There's no incentive to not compete. So I think that's why you have all these 2 or 3 year contracts. The hope is that now that you don't have Craig Berube as the head coach anymore, whose defensive system completely stifled Matthews' ability. Like,
I agree.
oh my God,
Matthews, in my opinion, is one of the top defensive offensive players in the league. An incredible penalty killer. It just sucks that he was used in a way that didn't complement his talents.
Yeah, like he could be a Selke contender, but instead, they had him taking defensive faceoffs, which is something really good about who they brought in free agency now at the bottom 6s. They're not going to need Matthews to take these defensive matchups anymore.
Right.
But yeah, I think the best thing for the team to do would be to go into a rebuild after 2 years if it doesn't work out. And this is a little bit of, Leaf hopium is, McDavid's contract's also up in 2 years,
No.
I think it's crazy the people saying McDavid's
It's not happening, my
There's
friend.
2 things. Listen. One thing about McDavid is that if he's going to any Canadian team right now, it's the Habs, and
I have to agree. Wasn't he at the F1 event a few weeks ago? He was looking at houses in Brossard.
I mean,
come on.
I mean, a player like
this is like
on a regular basis and then played for the Habs.
This is like Shohei Ohtani jet tracking. Okay, this is not going to work out.
Listen. I think I really think it's blue skies right now in Montreal. I think that we either keep the core we have now, or we could just trade a bunch of it away for McDavid. But regardless, I love the outcome. So I think that if he's going to a Canadian team, it's probably going to be Montreal. A question I would have for you, Itai, though, is if this next Leafs project doesn't work out for some reason, what do you do with Matthews? When exactly do you reach the last straw with him? Because he has been there for a while. He has gone through some recent injuries with the team, and I think a lot of fans are starting to wonder what if you could be a winner with them or not.
Yeah, it's been a really big question of where exactly was the lack of playoff level compete came from, and a lot of people pointed to Marner back during the Core 4 era because when you looked at the playoff stats, he had the biggest drop off of the 4. He also had a hat trick in the Stanley Cup Finals this last year. So it's like, what's exactly going on?
Right.
Although he was non-existent for the last 2 games of the series, but
so you have a valid point. And you have a valid point, fair.
And the question is it Matthews? Does he like golfing more than he likes playing hockey? And you'd hope that you bring in guys who hate golfing.
My answer to that is yes. He loves golf more than hockey.
Matthews must have the best golf swing in the world right now. I gotta say. I mean, I
That's
mean,
like
I
a
think
beautiful handicap.
I would, I mean, I would never challenge a Leafs player to a game of golf. You know, I think I would get absolutely destroyed. I mean, I think they could compete for green jackets at this point. But all jokes aside, though, I'm gonna let you take.
Yeah, it's just a question of is it Matthews? And the hope is that it's not. And the question is, he's got 2 years left on his contract. They're obviously going to play out this year with him. And what if it doesn't work out after this year? Do you say one more year, or do you try to trade him with a year of term left? We've seen now what it's like with Dylan Larkin, who wants to leave, and I actually just saw. I believe they stripped him of his captaincy earlier today. It's not listed on Puckpedia anymore. So the question is, what do you do with a guy once he says he wants out? How do you deal with a guy like that? So I think it really comes down to his belief that if it doesn't work out this year, if they can't make it to like the Eastern Conference Finals this year, what do you do with a guy like Matthews if all of a sudden he says he wants out? And that I
Is
don't know.
trade value
I'm not sure.
I mean,
Who would want him, and what would they give the Leafs? You know
well,
what I
that's
mean?
the thing. The longer you wait, the lower his trade value becomes as well. So that's something I think the Leafs got to take into account, right? I think over the last few years, we've been saying with Matthews' recent injury history with the franchise, just certain troubles that he's been facing in general, frustration by the Leafs and their fan base. When do you think like this organization officially reaches the last straw with Matthews? When exactly does this era end with him, if it ends at all? Because, one point I would like to make is the longer you keep a guy like that, the lower his trade value becomes. So, what's your take on Matthews and his future at the Leafs?
Yeah. So it's almost like there's blame associated with the core four era, and it's a question of where does the lack of compete come from? Was it and who was it on? So a lot of people pointed to Marner. Question of where did it exactly come from with that, because you can look at him on the Leafs and you look at all the core four, and in the playoffs they all had a drop off in their point production, but Marner had the steepest one. But then he goes and scores a hat trick in the Stanley Cup Finals, but then he disappears for Game 5 and 6. So what do you what can you make of that? But I don't think the blame is necessarily all on Matthews. A lot of it's also just media making things bigger. But exactly to your point about, the longer you hold on to him, the less value he has. And I think definitely the Leafs will hold on to him for this year and try to run it back. Again, all the salary cap coming off in 2 years. So it does give them flexibility for when that next day comes. And the hope would be that the Leafs are competitive, that they make the Eastern Conference Finals this year, for example. And then they can continue to compete and they can win a cup, as much as you guys wouldn't like that. But that would be the hope. And if he can't make it, if he doesn't show he could be, if he shows that he likes to golf more than he likes to play hockey, then maybe at that point you got to say goodbye. So yeah, I would hope it's not that case. The Leafs do have some young guys coming up the system, which is kind of why I was so surprised that they made so many forwards acquisitions during this trade deadline.
Right.
A fundamental difference between the Leafs under Kyle Dubas and the Leafs now is that they're not in a salary cap crunch. For example, right now it appears that they're over the salary cap, but they're also running 14 forwards, and one of the forwards is not Gavin McKenna, so it's actually 15 in the end. But also Max Domi, who had complications recovering from his back surgery. He's 3 and change million, and that's going to be off the books. That'll be on LTIR. I don't know if he's going to play again this season, if not for the rest of his contract, which is 2 more years. But he might be out of it. And if he's off the contract, then the Leafs actually have 2 and something million in cap space. So the situation's not so dire. They're not in the need to move people out. If you want to look at a team that needs to move people out, look at Vegas' situation. That is not looking
well, they just signed that big contract with Rasmus Anderson for 7 something, and they have so many large contracts. Their cap space is non-existent. They're gonna have a lot of trouble moving forward.
They've got 9 forwards, 6 D men, and 2 million in cap space.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for them, but
the math doesn't math.
Yeah, it doesn't math. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have you on again for more Leafs in intel.
Main squeak.
Yeah, I'll expect to call the moment they lose a game to the Habs, and then you'll want to have me on.
Absolutely. I've already reserved that for the first game of the season.
All right. Okay,
Thanks,
guys.
It's been a pleasure having you on. Good to see you. We hope to see you again on the pod soon. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Bye.
take care. All
What
right.
a legend. What a legend. Moving on to the Habs, right? We've spoken a lot about the Leafs, our arch rival, but what a signing today. And Sam, I want your take, and I want to hear what Mr. Malamud would have to say about this signing. I'm sure he has a lot to say about this, a lot of amazing things. Ivan Demidov today signed an 8-year extension for $9.125 million AAV. That will be his salary cap hit starting not this coming season, but the season after for 8 more years. So we've locked Ivan Demidov for 9 years. We have him for 9 more years. Sam, oh boy, it's exciting to be a Habs fan.
Oh, yeah, the skies are looking blue. I mean, I'm loving this trade from Montreal. I think locking up a guy like Demidov for the future is just exactly what this team needs to give them the confidence to believe that they could be a contender for years down the line. A deal similar to that of Lane Hudson, a little bit more, around $1 million more, but nevertheless, one that's quite worth it. I think he's worth every penny we're paying for this and I think that it was a completely reasonable price for the amount of time we're locking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love this. I love this deal for Montreal. It still allows us to have a reasonable amount of cap space to make other moves and just to not, be too close to the salary cap. I think Demidov, in my opinion, whether it be a popular opinion or not, has the highest ceiling from any Habs player on our team. Um, I mean, I think we saw Cole Caulfield reach probably what his potential is as a goal scorer this year. I think he could have done a little bit better in the playoffs, but I mean, the regular season was just phenomenal with a generational, just unprecedented 53 goals, 52, 53 goal season. We see Suzuki like really coming in together as an amazing forward for Montreal. We see a lot of guys like a goalie like Dobic really coming into his own, but I think a guy like Demidov, although he's already amazing, has so much more to give. I mean, he has so much more to give to this organization. I think the potential is just through the roof. And even if he doesn't fully reach that potential, I still think this trade is worth it. You're locking up an amazing forward with unbelievable speed, a great playmaker. I think he could shoot a little more, but besides for that little asterisk, I love his game. I think he's such an offensive powerhouse with this team. I want to hear what you have to think about it, but I'm all for it.
So I heard this stat today, and I need to fact check this, but apparently no NHL team has ever won a Stanley Cup with having a player signed for more than $10 million. Now, I don't know if this is true. I saw this somewhere, and my first thought was, well, Sergei Bobrovsky just won 2 Stanley Cups at a $10 million contract. Is this legit? So whether it's true or not, we signed Ivan Demidov for 9 mil. And I just want to go through our roster. Nick Suzuki is a 100-point player. We have him for 7.875 million, almost 7.9 mil for
Unbelievable.
for 4 more years. Cole Caulfield, 7.85 million. 51 goal scorer this year. That is incredible value for those 2 players. Those are our top 2 players, and we have them for 4 and 5 more years under $8 million. To me, that's mind-boggling. That's absolutely ridiculous. Moving on to Uri Slafkovsky, $7.6 million until 2033. That's a steal and a half. Noah Dobson and Lane Hudson are for 9.5 and 8.85 million. They're both signed for 2033 and 2034. And now with the with the re-signing or with the extension signing of Demidov at 9.125 million for 8 more years, our core is locked up for at least 4 years
I think it's
at incredible value, right? Itai mentioned that the Vegas Golden Knights have incredible star power, but they only have I think 15 players signed, and they only have $2 million in cap space left. I mean, I don't think any team in the league has signed this much value, right? Or the bang for their buck than the Montreal Canadiens have, right? The future is so bright. And we touched upon this last podcast. You know, I think it's an exciting time to be a Habs fan, right? I mean, you were on the streets of Montreal in playoffs, right? It was electrifying. And with this signing, this just adds to our future. This was an incredible signing, in amazing news to see earlier today.
I think this was, I mean, just to build on what you said, like I said before, I think this was an amazing signing. I think that this team, I mean, all these players signing for under $10 million each represents a great deal of selflessness. I mean, a team that clearly wants to win, young players that also demonstrate a will to remain in Montreal for the long term. I think this team believes in the vision, and I think that this has Carolina Hurricanes written all over it. I
I
mean,
agree. Absolutely.
I think this team is going to be a contender for a while, and I think we have time to get there. Finishing off the Sports and Schmooze podcast in our caller segment, Frustrated Fred is on the line. He has a lot to say. We're talking about the Habs. Just go for it.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the line. Yeah, well, you could keep on waiting. What's up?
I'll tell you something, you know. I'm looking at the headlines today, right? And I'm getting pissed off. I'm getting really, really frustrated. I really am. I'm gonna
Why?
Nick Paul, Sergei Bobrovsky are going to the Leafs. My point is that what do we hear from the Canadians? Crickets. Crickets.
Well, I mean, what's your take on the Demidov signing? That was an incredible move, no?
Of course they had to run. Of course they had to do that. They had to, right?
And it was incredible value.
It was listen. They're all taking less. Caulfield took less. A little bit Lane Hudson took less. They want to work this team, but they got to pull the trigger on a big deal. They have.
Listen, I think in recent years we've seen both Gordon and Hughes come up with big deals, right, to fit those key roles, right? With Noah Dobson last season. I think would you ever suspect they would pull off a big signing like Jason Robertson? Would that even be in the cards for us?
Well, it all depends what he wants. He turned down $15 million a year with Seattle.
Well, I don't think he had a chance to win with Seattle, right? He lost with Dallas in the first round. Do you think that he would have a perfect role being a first line winger, a second line winger with Montreal?
I don't think they're going to pay him that much, but you never know. We'll see. I'm more interested in what's going to happen with Machenko, you know, because
Right.
that's the only, but it's going to cost them a lot. It is going to cost them a lot.
Yeah, Kirill Machenko is a force to be reckoned with. I think he stands at 6'5", an incredible winger who's proven to be a dominant player in the NHL, and he would be an excellent addition for playoff hockey for the Habs moving forward.
Right. But and also they just drafted that monster kid from Russia.
Yeah, Gleb Kucherich or Machenko or whatever his name is.
Run people through the boards. It's unbelievable. It's
he's incredible. I've seen some of his highlights, and I wouldn't want to play against him because he is a monster on the boards.
Right. But I do have to say one thing. I was very happy the Canadians did a classy thing this week. They traded Gallagher to Vancouver, and they did.
Yeah.
That was a class move. He deserved it. We're gonna miss him here, but it is what it is, right? He just couldn't keep up. He'll play a role over there, but they did the right thing by him. It's sad to see him go, but that's life. Now we move on. But I mean, maybe they're gonna wait for the beginning of the season to make a move. I don't know. You know, there's nobody in it's a very weak free agency list this year, and there's nothing really out there. But I'm surprised at Toronto. I have to be honest with you. They're not rebuilding. They're building to play this year.
That was the biggest shock. All of these moves, I think it was 5 or 6 moves today alone, right? They've just shown to the world that we're not looking to rebuild despite them being in a position where they should have.
Right. And you know what? I'll tell you something else. This is all done for the benefit of Matthews. This is all done to build up so he can win now again. That's it. But if this thing blows up and it doesn't work out, Matthews' contract, he's gone. He's going to request a trade. You know, he's going
I
to.
think so too.
Guys are doing now who don't want to stay in Canada, and that's what
Oh,
it's.
for sure.
But they're making a move. I give this new GM over there a lot of credit. You know, I do. He's been very aggressive, super aggressive. But I have to tell you, but the East Division now just became a completely new division.
Oh, for sure.
Florida is a monster. They picked up Gudas from Anaheim.
He's talking
No,
about
I
the
don't
cheese.
know.
You're talking about the cheese Gouda. You know,
Yeah, I mean, Radko Gudas was an incredible signing. You have Brady and Matthew Tkachuk,
Don't,
and then you have Brad Marchand.
don't
Like,
them. I told you guys this is one. I don't talk about the Tkachuk brothers. I don't. I can't take them. Okay, they're dishonest. I don't like them. Okay, them and their father. You ever listen to their podcast?
well, didn't Keith Tkachuk just get inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame this
Yeah,
year?
I know. You want to know? You want to know how good the Tkachuks are? Just ask them. That's how good they are. Yeah, they'll fight you all day long, 24/7. Okay.
all right,
Love that on their podcast.
all right, frustrated Fred, you're out of here. We're ending the caller segment. Nice speaking to you.
That's it. Okay, guys. By the way, guys, congratulations on the podcast. Saw episode 1. Really, really, really good stuff. Keep it up. I wish you guys all the best. Like, call me next week if you want to hear some new frustrated friends takes. Okay.
Thank you. Will do, of course. I love him. I love him.
Yeah, we can't get enough of them.
Oh my gosh, can't get enough of frustrated Fred.
Can't get enough of them.
Wow.
Good.
Listen, I think summing this all up in the hockey segment, I think, the Maple Leafs really did a lot today, and they should be proud of what they did because they really set themselves up for short-term success. The one thing I will say is it ain't gonna work.
It ain't gonna work.
It ain't gonna work.
It never works.
And with the slight delay of Montreal not making any significant additions is not the worst thing in the world. Today was the first day of free agency. There's a whole summer to worry about making the right moves and signing the right players. And we'll cover that on future episodes.
We'll be covering it as well.
Right, amazing. Well done. Thank you guys for listening to episode number 2 of the Sports and Schmooze podcast. If you have any suggestions, topics that you would want us to go over, different sports you would want us to cover, please comment in the section. And as every podcast member would like, subscribe and follow for more sports content.